Welcome, it is Desiree, and we are here on our second video of our fourth series where we are basically building a scene. Whether we're combining products or we're making interaction or it's 3D, whatever that is, it's going to be a card, but we're combining this in some way and maybe using different techniques along the way for our cards. Now, are these cards great for production style? Absolutely not. These are those cards for that special someone. We may even hand deliver it, but these are not your production style unless you start in January for the upcoming holiday season of that year. Just saying. And probably, like only 5. So today, what I'm going to do is we're going to combine a stamped image, and I'm going to use, just to add a little bit of color, not too much, but a little bit of color to this globe here by Indigo Blue. It's the Skates Snow Globe. It's absolutely gorgeous. And it is a red rubber stamp, which will give me a wonderful, absolutely wonderful image or impression. And we're going to mix it with this embossing folder by Spellbinders. This embossing folder is called Holiday Florals Swag, and it's got this perfect opening in here, and that's what we're going to do. It's going to be a 5x7 card. We're going to use watercolor paper, watercolor pencils, like I said, and we're even going to pull in some watercolors for the wash in the background. I don't want to use the pencils for that. So lots of different things going on here, lots of different techniques. So let's not wait. Just remember, a little bit longer video. I'm going to switch over to a voiceover, so definitely, even if it's a voiceover, I gab, absolutely. But I hope you enjoy it. I want you to grab your supplies, whether that's just coloring an image, or if you're just crafting in the background. I'd love to have you all here. So let's get started. We're first going to stamp our image. Now, I had taken the image prior and just put little tiny marks on the cardstock that I'm using. Now, I am using Canson XL watercolor paper, cold press here. It's one of my favorites. I know it's not 100% cotton, but I love this paper for watercolor because I do like the effect that it gives. Because it's cold press, it has a lot of texture to it. I like the more textured side. So we're going to stamp this multiple times. Now, when I set this down, I must not have put the stamp in flat. Again, there was a bubble in there. So we got to work around the bubble because I'm not going to move this stamp now. We've already started. To do something with what I'm doing here, you want to cut your panel to the size that you want it. You want to stamp your image. And then you want to make sure that you use whatever medium you're going to use to color it. I'm coming in with a white eraser to remove the marks. And we're going to use watercolor pencils. I love watercolor pencils. I think they are a great medium to use. They give you a watercolor look. You don't have to get too much into blending. You don't have to get too much into shading. When I put down my watercolor, I'm actually just laying down some color along the edges because I'm going to pull that in. When it comes to these colors, and you'll see that. as I continue to add the colors. You're still seeing the white of the paper. Once I come in with a brush, now I like to use a brush and water, not a watercolor brush. I have better control, or at least I feel I have better control when it comes to that. You can certainly use a watercolor brush, use whatever you have. And you'll see that all these colors just come to life. Now, because this is a red rubber stamp, it has a lot of details already. It's got hatch marks. It's got these fine lines. So it's already taking care of the shading. So I only need to add a little bit of color. And that's what I'm doing here. Just adding that color, getting it all laid down. This is not heat emboss, because you're not using that much water when you come in with your brush. You want to dab off the water after you clean it, so it's just damp to move those colors around. Okay, so sit back. I am going to turn on some music just to save the voice. All right, but sit back and enjoy, and we will come back once we are done. Now that we have the color added to our image, I'm going to come in with some more traditional watercolors, a watercolor pan set, and I'm just going to make a wash to go around it. I'm going to have a white border that goes around. I want to keep that far, because once I get the wash on, I'm going to come clean my brush and come in with some clean water to just fade that line out. So it looks like there's a glow that's coming from that snow globe. Now, I've got to keep an eye, as you're adding that water, you can see it's pushing out along that edge. So we're going to smooth that out as well. And then again, they're going to dry back. I'm going to come in with a smaller brush that's going to come up closer to the globe. And then just make sure that we have all of that in there. I'm making sure there was a few leaves that I missed, so I'm real quick hitting those, just adding some colors to them, and just using the watercolor at this point just to fill those in. And we're going to let that dry. Now, as usual, I always forget to hit record on something. I came in around the outside where the watercolor was. I liked the watercolor, but I didn't. I don't think it wasn't dark enough, but the color was close to Uncharted Mariner. How true is that? So that's what I used around the outside, keeping the watercolor closer to the snow globe and using a brush to get a soft look. I'm now placing that snow globe in the opening of this embossing folder, this Swag Christmas embossing folder, so that only the outer perimeter around it will be embossed. And you can see just fine areas are going into the snow globe. I'm then coming in with my white pigment ink, and I'm just lightly brushing along the top just to highlight that design even more. Yes, does ink transfer onto my white pigment ink pad? It does. This is the only thing that I use it for, is to go over when I've got inks down. I have a clean one if I'm going to be stamping. Really wanted to add some snow to this. Because I used a white pigment ink, because I know it's still around there and I went around those edges. I wish I had a bigger container for my white, but I bent the cardstock and just got it into my white embossing powder, just dipped it in there, and then heat embossing around it. If there was too much, I just took a dry brush to it and then just made it look like all the other edges. And I really like that. I think that added a lot. Because of all the water, because of the embossing folder, because of the heat embossing, this cardstock is warped. I'm going to use my double-sided 2-inch film tape from Uline. This will flatten this panel out. It is a wonderful double-sided tape. It is fantastic. It is unforgiving. For me, the moment it touches paper, it's down. It is that strong. It is a wonderful, wonderful double-sided tape. I use it a lot when it comes to my albums that I create, my scrapbook albums, my junk journal albums. But I use it when I use a lot of water, when I do a lot of heat embossing, when that paper just goes all to wonky. That's when I will use this. And again, it takes the warp out. It flattens the panel out because you rub it along to put that down. And you'll see when I remove the release paper here, and 9 out of 10, I will do it to both layers. I start at one side and you can see how I walked right across. And again, you can see it's flat. I'm really liking the way this one came out. We got a lot of techniques going on here. We started out with stamping our image and also making sure that our panel that we stamped on, which is Canson XL watercolor paper, that's what I used, making sure that was cut to the size that we wanted. So you want to make sure that you determine the size of the card that you're making with your stamp. So you're going to cut your panel first, then stamp your image, then do whatever work you're doing, whether that's alcohol marker, watercolor pencils, watercolors, colored pencils, whatever that may be. You want to do that work first and then make sure that it's dry. Then you'll run that through your embossing folder, all right? And you be able to position it where you want that image to be. I wanted it to be in the opening, so this swag is now coming around it. Now, don't get me wrong, it is going into the image as well, but that image is just coming forward. Now, I chose to put a wash of watercolor around the outside so that this had a glow. Didn't do too much in the centers. I wanted that to stay white, but then had that color come out. And then, you know, again, what's a video without me hitting record? I came around with the Uncharted Mariner around the outside. So this is the watercolor, and then the Uncharted Mariners on the outside. Now, because I used the Distress Oxide, that's a pigment pigment ink hybrid, so there's both. So it stays wet just a little bit longer. I heat set it a little bit, and then I made sure to go around the edges with the white pigment ink after I brushed it over the top, just to accentuate the design from the embossing powder. I didn't want that to be completely lost. Not that it was, but I wanted that to stand out more, and then just have the illusion of snow coming in around the outside. Now, if you don't have white embossing powder, you could just use a white pigment ink. If you don't have a white pigment ink, you could use a white gel pen or white watercolor, you know, whatever, white acrylic paint, whatever that is, you can put that around the outside. So you don't have to limit yourself. Okay, well, she used white embossing powder, I have to use that. Use what's in your stash. Again, if that's just acrylic, get a sponge and just dab it around the outside. And that would be a beautiful, beautiful effect. All right. I didn't put a sentiment onto the front. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. There's a lot of work to the front. I don't want this to be lost, and I'll be able to write it on the inside. Now, I used my 2-inch film double-sided tape from Uline. It's a very strong tape. It's a very unforgiving tape, meaning the moment it makes contact with the paper, it's down. There is no tearing it apart, at least from my experience. Some have said that they have done it. Okay, good. Every time I've tried, I have literally destroyed the card, or at least the card base. I've been able to save the top and then just have different layers going through it. I have a very thin border going around of black, and that's because we stamped the image with our black VersaFine just to have that pop a little bit. And I used the double-sided tape on both pieces, not only the piece that we watercolored, put on a watercolor wash, so now we've got a lot of water going on, but I've also embossed the image, which helped flatten it. But again, we've got a lot of bumps and grooves going on, so you can see how the card is now flat from using that tape. It is a godsend. I swear by it. Again, through my experiences, it's wonderful. Okay, so that is our second video of our 4th series. Again, we're building scenes. We're digging into that stash and doing all kinds of crazy things to put onto the front of our cards. I will put the main supplies listed down below if you want to check them out. Again, my goal is for you to get into your stash, use your products in another way, stretch out their life, give them new life. That's the primary objective. But I do have some of those people that are interested in these and would like to check them out. So that's why I do list them. So I'm hitting both sides here, okay? If you have any questions, make sure you leave those down below. I am so enjoying the comments. You all really seem to be enjoying this series and the way that I have it set up, which I'm kind of liking too, to be very honest. But make sure you subscribe, make sure you hit the thumbs up, and by all means ring the bell so that you know when the next video is live. But most of all, enjoy the process. Guys, you're going to get sick and tired of me saying it, but it's the truth. You are creating art whenever you are creating with your stamps, your dies, your pattern paper. It is art, and you are creating it. So enjoy the process. Don't get frustrated. There is no stress. When that happens, you need to walk away. Walk away and get some air or go do something else. Remember, it doesn't matter if we use the same exact materials and do the same exact things. Our two cards will never look the same. You have your ways, I have mine. That's what makes each of us unique. So please enjoy the process, but remember what is truly most important. Always be creative in everything that you do, and I will see you in video number 3. Till then.